recorded.
Great to see people trickling in. We're going to give everyone a couple minutes here just to continue to join. Welcome, everyone. Still more people coming into the room. We're just going to continue to wait for another minute or two before we get going this morning. One more minute sound good, Michael and Kimberly, or do you want to wait for a little bit longer?
Minute's good. Good by me.
Great. We'll get started at 12:03. Welcome, everyone. My name is Julian Goresko, and I'm the Sustainability Director for Johns Hopkins University in the Office of Sustainability. We're thrilled to have you join us this afternoon, for our webinar, How to Get Your Electricity from Renewables at No Added Cost, and an overview of the Maryland Community Solar Pilot Program with a look at both renters and homeowners. I'm joined by two fantastic guests today. Kimberly Armstrong, who is the Program Director for Solar United Neighbors. Kimberly has many years of experience as a sustainability advisor, author, and community advocate, and has been recognized nationally for her work on social justice and equity. And Michael Rosenblum, who is an associate professor of biostatistics at Johns Hopkins University in the Bloomberg School of Public Health, and a passionate community solar advocate, and really the catalyst for today's event. Just to kick things off today, I want to give you all a little bit of an overview of the goals for this webinar. And then we'll talk a little bit about the agenda before passing things off. So our goals for today are to explain what community solar is. And we assume nearly all of you who are here today are interested in the answer to that question. How community solar as a model for clean energy is different from rooftop solar or third-party supplied clean power. What the Maryland Community Solar Pilot Program is, and how can you sign up for that and avoid misinformation when it comes to making choices around clean energy. So our hope is to make this as interactive a dialogue as possible. And so we very much encourage you to ask questions and to incorporate those into the Q&A at the bottom. And we'll be using the first 40 minutes or so today, 35 or so minutes left now to really talk and present and share, and trying to reserve the last 20 for Q&A. And so with that in mind, I'm going to pass to Kimberly Anderson, who's going to kick off the conversation today with a presentation on Solar United Neighbors and a deeper explanation on the Community Solar Pilot Program.
Well, thank you, Julian and Michael, for inviting me to do this presentation. And I'm Kimberly Armstrong, the Maryland Program Director for Solar United Neighbors. And I've been with Solar United Neighbors just about a little bit over over a year. However, I've been in the environmental industry for at least the last 10 to 15 years. So I just want to thank everyone for coming. This is really a great topic, and one of the goals for Solar United Neighbor is around community education, to educate people not just about rooftop solar, but also community solar. So some people may be saying, what is community solar? I'm going to share my screen. One of the alternatives to having not rooftop solar, but community solar, which is a Maryland-based pilot program that first it started out as a 3-year program, and because it was going so slow and a lot of people really didn't understand what it was, it's taken a little bit longer for people to grasp it, is that the state of Maryland has now expanded the Maryland Community Solar Program to 7 years. So this is legislated. It's also monitored, and the regulations are through the PSC, the Public Service Commission. So there is an accountability as well. So some people may be saying, what is the alternative? What about people who can't get rooftop solar? Where are they? Community solar, or some people may call it community shared solar or solar gardens, is installed somewhere other than on your property. It's proportional, and it's not an all or nothing kind of thing. And your solar energy is virtual, so you get a credit on your energy bill. And we'll go through each one of these different bullet points a little bit more in detail. So this is a clear example of people who may want to participate in clean energy or solar. However, they can't get solar on an actual rooftop. So say, for instance, if you live in an apartment or you live in a condo, or say that your roof looks like this one, you don't have the resources to get your roof fixed, or your roof is in really bad condition. However, you still are interested in participating in clean energy, renewable energy, and solar. So community solar addresses that need. And this is what it looks like. So when I talked about earlier in the earlier slide about it's not just virtual, but it's somewhere located other than on your home. So this is what we call a solar array. And maybe you have seen in your travels like big giant fields of solar panels. That could be a community solar, what we call development, which is also what we call subscriber hosts. So there's a developer that develops this big field. There's all these different solar panels. So the way that you get into community solar is based off of how much your energy consumption is in your home, or it could be also a business as well. So say the Smith family has a portion of the community solar array, and then the corner store has a portion of the solar array, along with the elementary school. And of course, schools and maybe some businesses, they use a lot more energy, so their subscription would be a lot bigger and a lot larger. So they would use more of what we call the megawatts within that solar array. There's a lot of good things and great things that have just happened in Maryland around policy. So the community solar expansion is one. The other one, in this past legislation, we had the community solar, the what we call net metering, went from 1,500 megawatts to 3,000 megawatts. And you may be thinking, well, why is that important? Well, it's important because the more megawatts we have, more people, more developers can develop more of what we call the solar array or solar fields. And that will allow more people to subscribe into community solar as well. And so I'm going to go back to another presentation. I actually want to show you what it is that we do at Solar United Neighbors as it pertains to our what we call a community solar platform. So let me share my screen. And I'm actually going to walk you through what a community solar, or not just community solar, but how you can participate in Maryland. And also one thing that I want to state as well is that the solar array, if you choose to participate in community solar, then the solar array has to be in your utility area, meaning that if you're in BGE utility territory, then the subscriber host also must be in the BGE territory, or PEPCO, or I think it's Potomac Edison or Delmarva. That array must be within the same utility area. So this is, Solar United Neighbors is a nonprofit. So we don't get paid to promote anyone, a particular organization or agency or anything like that. We're basically a mechanism to help educate people, to teach them not just about rooftop solar, but also community solar. So what you would do, I think we will have a document or at least some links that you can actually go to and do your due diligence and your homework and see if you want to participate. So you would click on that. And as you can see, community solar is not just in Maryland, so it's also in Colorado, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Minnesota. Now, Solar United Neighbors, we are in 12 states. However, we do also a lot of consulting across the country. So you would click on Maryland. It will take you to the Maryland page. I want to go, let me see if can I go back? I wanted to go back. I actually wanted to brag on myself just a little bit because I was in the last picture and I wanted to point it out to you all, but I missed the opportunity. So I'm just going to keep it moving. So you would click on that. And so if you're in BGE territory, and we're also going to have a quick demonstration too to show you what this what a bill will look like and how you would get your credit. So you would just say, what's your average utility savings that you want to save, or your monthly bill? And it will calculate all these things for you, give you an estimate, and then you will go to view community solar subscriptions, click on that, and it'll ask you again your monthly bill amount. And these are the particular, what we call subscriber hosts that we have on our platform. So I'm just going to choose one just to give you a sample and, to show you exactly what it will look like. So your estimated annual savings could be at least $56 a month, or I say close to $57 a month. There's a fixed percent of your savings. And this particular host right here has a community solar platform. No, I mean, not platform, but a community solar array is in Westminster. So you will actually know where the community solar array is located. Then as you'll see also, there's one in Orange Mills, there's one in Kingsville. However, they are two different organizations, or what we call subscriber hosts. So it goes into a little bit more detail as well. It'll tell you how much you're going to say. It's going to be at least 5% below what your utility rate and what you're paying now. You'll also see if it's low income accessible. Low income accessible means that a portion, 30% of some solar arrays have to have a carve out for what we call low moderate income. And this allows it to be more equitable for everybody to get into, regardless of what your income is. So some of them have it, some of them don't. So you'll see right here where it says low income accessible, and they'll say no. And that just could be because maybe the array is smaller. So therefore they don't have enough space for low moderate income. And you click on details and it'll go into a little bit more details. It'll tell you what your upfront payment is, the transferable, the subscription length of years is 3 years. And each subscriber host is different. So I always encourage people to, do your homework, ask a lot of questions, because each subscriber host contract is also different. So you may have some that are 3 years, you may have some that are 25 years, some may have penalties, some may not. And then also because community solar now has just been expanded, but because of legislation and policy, sometimes they will change your contract in order to help not just bring the cost down, but make it more feasible and economical for what we call a subscriber. You would just fill it out with your name and your email address, and then someone will contact you. And it just goes into great detail. And this is for each one of what we call the subscriber hosts. So with that being said, I am going to allow Michael, do you want to talk about your experience
Yep.
with being a community solar customer?
Thank you. I would love to. I'm going to put a link. I've been putting some links in the chat. I'm putting one in right now. That it's the first link that I put in. It's a link to the one-page summary document on community solar, on the Maryland Community Solar Pilot Program. And I encourage you to click on that link and maybe bookmark it or download it so you have something to look back at later. It just gives a summary of what we're talking about, and it gives links on how to sign up if you're interested, including the links that I put in the chat already. So the way that I came to this, and just to give background, I'm an associate professor in biostatistics in the Hopkins School of Public Health, and the only reason I'm connected to this is I'm a customer, and a very happy customer of Neighborhood Sun, which is one of the providers of community solar in Maryland. It's one of the options you can click on in what Kimberly showed. And the way I came to find community solar is I thought, I'd like to support clean energy. And I looked at what fraction of, I'm a BGE customer, I live in Baltimore City, and I looked at what fraction of power generation for my home electricity comes from renewables. And this is a couple of years ago, but I encourage the audience just to take a guess. We can't interact with you right now, but think to yourself, what fraction do you think BGE, this is a couple of years ago, what fraction of the energy is renewable? And it was 4%. I mean, 96% non-renewable. That's roughly split equally between nuclear, gas, and coal. 4% renewable, and of that 4%, some of it is burning trash, which is dubious whether that really is incineration should be counted there. So I felt pretty terrible about contributing to global warming and also air pollution just by using electricity like everyone has to, and I saw all these options, and I thought, well, I should be able to figure this out. I'm a smart guy, right? I should be able to go online, spend half an hour, and I'll figure out the best option. And then it didn't just take. I was so wrong. I was 100% wrong, and way overconfident that I could do that. And it in total, I think and this is an honest estimate, not exaggeration, I think it's taken me, I've spent about 50 or 60 hours really figuring out what is the best option. It's extremely complicated. It's an unfortunate situation. But that said, having invested that time, I wanted to share what I found out, which is there really is one best option. And this is my opinion. I should give the disclaimer that I'm not representing Johns Hopkins University. This is just my opinion as an individual. And I have no connection to any of these companies, Neighborhood Sun or any, I don't get any money for any of it. But basically the community solar is, in my opinion, by far the highest impact thing you can do. The highest impact in terms of return on investment of the time you put in is probably will take you an hour total if you decide to sign up. I mean, it'll take you 5 minutes to sign up, but then you'll get a contract and you'll have to read it, spend half an hour checking it out, make sure you're okay with it. And then you have to, go online and give a little account information, and then you're done. You set up auto pay and you don't have to do anything. And then for the rest of your life, or at least as long as you're in Baltimore or in the BGE territory, it can move with you if you like to a different house if you're in the BGE territory. You're cutting your carbon footprint. I did a carbon footprint calculator online. You have to take that. That's not going to be perfect, but it gives you a rough approximation how much your carbon footprint is. It cut my carbon footprint by 10% to do this. So that's cutting my carbon footprint by 10% for the rest of my life, or at least as long as I'm in Baltimore BGE area, and at no cost. In fact, I'll save a little money. It's tiny, but I'll save a little bit, and for a very little effort. So I thought, oh, this is amazing. So that's why I'm really passionate to get the word out about it. and highly recommend that you consider it. And the reason that it's, I think, high impact is that by signing up for community solar, you're causing the construction, you and everyone else who's signing up for one of these through community solar, you're causing the construction of a new solar array that otherwise wouldn't be there. So they need to fill up, I think it's around 500 slots for one of these solar arrays for residential customers. And so being one of them, you're directly leading to the solar array getting constructed. And that will, that plugs into the grid. My solar array, the one I'm subscribing to, is in White Marsh. So that's connected into the grid. There's nothing installed in my home. It's just that, my electricity is unimpacted. I have no solar panels at my house, but basically every month, my energy bill, the electricity supply component that I pay, that goes to that solar array, supporting the solar array, and instead of going to coal, nuclear, and gas plants. So that's the advantage. And the other thing you're doing by signing up for community solar, if you decide to do that, is you're proving that there is demand for renewable energy in Maryland. So the program, so this is a state-sponsored program, the Maryland Community Solar Pilot Program. It's a pilot program because the state wanted to assess, do people really care about this? Would they want this? And so they need, it was for 3 years, and there was enough support that they extended it, as Kimberly said, to I think 7 years. And but by signing up, you're showing that people do care about this, and that will lead to will help it continue and grow. Let's see, and you might be a little skeptical about this, as I was. That's why I spent 50 to 60 hours. I'm one of the most skeptical people. I'm a statistician. I don't know if you've ever met statisticians. Many of you maybe have, but I'll just speak for myself. I won't say anything. I don't want to make any generalizations, but personally, I'm kind of an anal person. I do not want to get scammed. And I'm extremely careful, and I checked very thoroughly I called the Maryland Attorney General's office to see, have there been any complaints against this company, Neighborhood Sun? I'll just talk about the company I know, that the one I've been a customer of for 2 years, Neighborhood Sun. And which I'm a highly satisfied customer. So first I checked Better Business Bureau website. They have a place where they list, do people lodge complaints against the company? 0 complaints. There's nothing in that category compared to there's some other companies you look at, there's like hundreds of complaints. And I called Maryland Attorney General's office. Have there been any complaints? I did some looking online, but no complaints. And then I started asking questions to Neighborhood Sun. I started emailing them and asking them questions. I sent them some 20 to 30 different questions, just about essentially every detail. I just wanted to assess it as best I could. Did not want to get scammed. And they answered very promptly. At one point, I asked a pretty technical question that the customer service person didn't know how to answer. And then they said, we'll ask the CEO. And then he called me later that day, Gary Skolnick. So it's a small company. I think it was only like 8 people or something, at least at that time. So it was super, super responsive. And so let me just do a quick screen share and show you my, and by the way, so I've been a customer for 2 years. I also have 4 neighbors who also signed up. They've been customers for a similar amount of time, and everyone's very happy. I mean, and I'll show you what my bill looks like if you're interested to see it. Just screen share here. So here's my BGE bill from March. Notice I've blacked out my account number and electric choice ID numbers, redacted that. Well, that'll come up in a minute, why you should be careful about those. Not related to community solar, but anyway, here's my electricity bill, and it looks the same as it always did, my BGE bill. But you get this, you see the arrow pointing at the bottom too. It says other charges and credits. I have a $25.97 credit, but my bill's reduced by that much. And then it says details page 3, go to page 3, and it's a community solar adjustment. That's how much I got from community solar. It was about $30 of electricity use that month, and $25.97 of it covered by community solar. Now, and the way it works is your bill is reduced by however much is provided by your allocation, usually somewhere between 80 to 100% of your allocation from the solar array. And Then 2 months later, you'll get an invoice from Neighborhood Sun, whoever you sign up with, for that amount, but reduced by 5%. So they'll invoice me for $22, $23 a couple months later. Now it's all on auto pay, so it all takes care of itself. But the net at the end is that I've saved a couple dollars. But then that's fine. But it's the main thing is that I'm directly supporting new solar array, and that's reducing the amount of pollution by, it's on the order of tons of CO2 per year, at no cost. So and pretty minimal effort. If you subtract, ignoring all the effort I put in for research purposes, but if you just as a user, it's pretty simple to do. So let me stop my screen share. And one thing I wanted to emphasize is when you, so I put, let's see, I put that summary that documents the community solar summary and links to sign up if interested. In the middle there is a link if you're interested in, say, Neighborhood Sun, the one that I'm a customer of, and I'm a very, very happy customer, recommend it to anyone. If you want to sign up, you can put your information in through that. You also, that doesn't obligate you right now to anything if you sign up there. That's like showing your interest, and then they'll get back to you they'll tell you what's possible for your area. And you may have to wait a few months for it to kick in. But that doesn't cost you anything inside. So it might not immediately start, but just to set that expectation. I wanted to mention that once you get a contract, once they have a slot set up for you, if you want one, and then a contract will come. And one thing that sometimes I did a double take when I saw it the first time, but actually I thought it's not a good thing, but it's a good thing, is the contract was for 20 years. And I thought, whoa, I'm not going to sign a 20-year contract. I've never signed that's like a mortgage or something, is such a long contract. It's the only thing I know of that long. But actually the contract also has a termination clause. And that's something very important. I would recommend if you go to another company, which would be fine, other than Neighborhood Sun, just make sure you have a termination clause that you're allowed to terminate within some amount of time, say 60 days or something like that, for any reason at no cost. Now, I don't know why you actually would, but you never know. It's just always good to have that as you can end it whenever you want, and it will just revert back to what you had before at no cost for any reason. So that's what's the typical thing in Neighborhood Sun contracts. And the 20-year duration is really like you can have that contract up to 20 years. You have that slot reserved for you for up to 20 years. If you decide to end it earlier, that's fine. There's no cost to do that. But it's actually a good thing. It's kind of like a month-to-month lease, where it's up to 20 years, the maximum you could have it, but it's going to be, so I just encourage, don't be turned off, or just like check for the termination clause. But once you have that, it's actually a good thing that you have this long duration, because you can keep it that long. You won't have to look around again and sign up again. And if that still though is a sticking point for you, I know that Common Energy, one of the other providers, which I've heard good things about as well, though I don't know them that well, I'm not a customer, that they have 3-year contracts. So you could, if you like that, and it's good, you could do Common Energy. Let's see, I just have a few more things, and then we can get to questions. That I wanted to mention that you can, if you already have switched electricity providers to a different company than BGE, different supplier than BGE, there's like 30 different companies out there because the deregulated electricity market in Maryland, and maybe you signed up for a renewable option through wind or hydro or something like that. That's fine. You can still do community solar. They don't interfere with each other, in the sense that you can do community solar that will do 80 to 100% of your electricity. Anything else will get covered by what you signed up for with this other company. So there's no conflict. If you tell Neighborhood Sun, I'm with this other company, they'll say fine. That doesn't really affect them or community solar. So I recommend, if you already have done that, you could do both. Just sign up for community solar, just like everyone else, and that will just be added on. If you're deciding between the two, that's a little bit hard to figure out. My understanding but again, take it with a grain of salt, is that the highest impact thing you can do is community solar, as opposed to one of these other types of electricity supplier, like getting wind credits from Wyoming or something like the. But it is pretty hard to figure out, and I can't say for any particular. It's going to depend on the particular case. But the simplest thing is, at the minimum, the first thing I would do if I were interested in improving your carbon footprint through your electricity is sign up for community solar, or at least consider doing that. And then you might also consider these other options. They could be good too. But there's no conflict between them. That was my main point. So you're not like, oh, I can't do this because I already have something else I switched to. There is a low income option, or low middle income option, that was mentioned by Kimberly. And the threshold for that, as I put in the chat, is a household income of $66,000. So if you qualify, if your household income is less than is around 66,000, then you can get even more than the 5% reduction in your electricity supply cost. It goes, depending on your income, there's a scale, and it could go all the way up to 25% reduction. So it's even a bigger benefit if you're a lower income. I still recommend it just to everyone. It's still mostly for the carbon footprint reduction. Everyone, that's the same for everyone. But and the last thing I wanted to talk about, let's see. Last thing I want to talk about. I'm just seeing if I address some of these questions. Oh yeah. So yeah. There's a question about what happens if the solar array doesn't produce enough energy. Yeah, then you're back to basically if there are days like that, like it's kind of averaged over some time. But if there are days where there's not enough sun, or it's just a super cloudy day, or and solar array doesn't generate as much as normal, then yeah, it's going to have to come from something else. But you're still better off. You're the same as if you just didn't sign up, essentially, as having done nothing. You're never worse off. But like there might be some days where solar doesn't produce as much. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it's still most of the time it's going to be working. And what was I going to say? Oh, the other nice thing about solar, about doing community solar, even compared to, like, the best is probably rooftop solar, but there are some advantages to community solar above, in some ways, having some things better than rooftop, in that these are solar arrays that are built on top of a landfill, and they're optimized. They have motors and sensors that tilt the solar panels to face the sun all day, we explained to my three-year-old, the sunflowers do that. So, but they're optimized. So they're going to be potentially more efficient in terms of than rooftop that is facing an arbitrary direction that might not be optimized. So they're actually pretty good. And so far I've gotten, it's covered all, even in the winter months, it's been pretty good for me. So to answer that question, let me see. The last thing I wanted to mention is scams, how to avoid scams. So I'd say if you want to know more about that, there's a link I put near the bottom, or at the bottom of that summary page, which is a link to the Maryland Office of People's Counsel, and they give you tips on how not to get scammed by utility. There are these kind of utility related scams. And the short version of that is, so there's nothing about community. There are no scams that have been ever reported, at least based on my researching, that no scams involving community solar. There are, on the other hand, concerning electricity in general, there have been a bunch of scams where someone knocks on your door and has a badge, and they say, I need to see your solar, I need to see your energy bill. And they ask, anyway, so I've had that happen to me. I know I've had neighbors. The advice from Maryland Office of People's Counsel is never give your information, any personal information, including what's on your electricity bill, to anyone who just comes and knocks on your door, even if they claim they're from a utility or they're from BGE even. BGE won't do that. Why would BGE come and ask for your utility bill when they're the one who generated the bill? It makes no sense. So I would say politely thank the person for coming and just say, I need to go, but thank you. And try to avoid scams like that. Just don't give out someone who comes or calls or texts or mails you a letter. Don't give out your personal information, including, Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, I was just I want to piggyback on that. One of the reasons why we do this community outreach and education around community solar because it is new, and trying to demystify, what the difference is between community solar and third party supplier are two totally different things. Third party suppliers are the ones that come knocking on your door and say, hey, we want to switch your utility. They want to, like Michael just mentioned, give you the bill. And I live in Baltimore City as well. So I have had those people, come knocking on my door as well. So we really want to educate people what community solar is and how you can benefit from it. And it's totally separate from third party supplier. I also sit on what we call a net metering working group with the Public Service Commission. So I'm on the regulatory working group. So one of the things that I really look out for is making sure that not just the language, but that is equitable for everyone and not scammy. Because I know in a lot of communities that people are like, no, we don't want anything. So if you don't know the difference, what the difference is, if nobody is really explaining it to you, then you just don't know. So I've had people say, well, how come everybody doesn't know about this? Community education. So one of my goals here in Baltimore, where I live, is to really educate as many people as I can, get as many people informed and signed up for community solar, because I see it like this. BG&E, your utility is going nowhere. You're going to have to pay it. You cannot get out of it, right? And if you don't pay it, they have something that's called a turn-off notice. They will come and turn you off. So I feel as though, if I can reduce my bill 5%, 10%, or 20%, then why not do it? Especially by the choice of using clean energy and renewable energy. I have rooftop solar as well. However, I can still subscribe into a community solar platform to offset my energy even more. And you may say, why do that? Because even though I have rooftop solar, I can only get so many panels because of my roof space. So that way, because of that, I can't offset as much of the energy as I would like. So therefore, I would subscribe into the community solar array or subscription. So, those are some things, and I just always encourage people to do your due diligence, just do your homework. Like Michael said, he spent almost a paycheck.
Probably 50 or 60. It just ended up like, I'm like, oh, if I just put 1 or 2 more hours in, but the more it's kind of like an onion. The more you peel back, the more like, what? Is that complicated?
Yeah,
I could talk to you forever about the intricacies, but I don't want to bore anyone with it. It's maddeningly complex and frustrating.
So this is a real thing. Like, when I talked about, you saw the slide where it says it's virtual, meaning that you don't see it. However, it does exist. Like the internet, you don't see the internet, but you know it exists because that's what we're using it to do Zoom right now. So, it's out there, and the developers, someone asked about cloudiness and, things of that nature. Developers, when they build these sites, most of them are for-profit companies. So trust me, they are not going to build a site that's not getting a whole lot of sun. And so it will work the same way as if you had rooftop solar. Some days you will produce more because of sunlight. Some days you will produce less, but that still doesn't affect your bill.
So when we were talking about this conversation, and I see we're getting questions in the chat and the Q&A, which is great. Please continue to send those. We all agreed that, well, first off, none of us are benefiting from this today. So the passion you're hearing, from today's presenters is really us trying to educate those of you in the Hopkins community that have showed up today to better understand some of the intricacies of this model and clean power choices and decision-making for consumers. So any of the links, anything like that, no personal gain, just passion around this topic. But we all agreed that, the conversation around access to clean energy was a little bit one-dimensional at times, and really, consumers often think, well, I can, get a rooftop installation or maybe I can buy clean power through some of the options that are presented to me that some of you have highlighted in the chat. A lot of us don't have the upfront capital to necessarily invest in an on-site rooftop system, or we're uncertain about that investment, whether it's access to capital, longevity of our time in our homes, or things along those lines. And then when it comes to the complexity of clean power purchasing through third-party suppliers, it's complicated. And there's a lot of climate guilt. A lot of people are trying to make good choices, want to do the right thing. And in fairness to them, it's not easy to parse between the different offerings and the different marketing that's out there around how to purchase verifiable renewable power. So one of the things that I think this model offers that I personally really like is, exactly where the solar development is located. And it really is backed by the principle of additionality, which means that, your subscription to the community solar model is directly resulting in the construction of a new array, as opposed to purchasing renewable energy credits or anything along those lines from an existing development, which can get very complicated. And I think we intentionally want to avoid today because, that becomes complicated for consumers. So knowing that your financial investment helps to deploy and scale new solar developments, scaling clean energy helps bring the costs down. And it's really an accessible model that is not only accessible to homeowners, but also renters. And so there are big issues of environmental justice, access, and equity when we talk about this model in relation to on-site, on-site panels as well. So I'm looking at the chat here. Michael, I see you diligently typing away. And I feel like we touched on a couple of the questions here. Kimberly or Michael, do either of you see others that we want to talk about a little bit? Particularly, I see the last one around the 5% reduction. Michael, you talked about the credit on your bill and the subsequent bill from community solar a couple months later, but maybe we should just reinforce, that there actually is a discount. This is free. And on top of it being free, you actually receive a small financial cost savings as well.
Yeah, is that okay, Kimberly? I can take that, or would.
Go ahead. I have another question. I see another question I want to answer, so you can take that one.
Okay, perfect. So the reason, I was pretty skeptical about this at first, and you not only is it free, which is amazing, because I was willing to pay somewhat more, if necessary, for getting green energy, but this one actually is you're saving money, guaranteed to save money. It's a small amount, but it's relatively, but it's still save a little bit. But then I was thinking, well, where does that money come from? Money doesn't just come out of nowhere. And so, my skepticism, and then I look reading the legislation that supports the Maryland Community Solar Pilot Program. So this is a state of Maryland legislation that supports it, that makes it happen. There's a tax in the money savings that comes from a tax incentive that's given to the builders of solar arrays. So they get something like 10%. I forget exactly the details, but they get a discount on creating the arrays, and it's that savings that gets passed down. But the bottom line is that you're able to save money because it's subsidized through a tax incentive by the state of Maryland. And that's completely in contrast. So solar, there was another question in the chat about, well, how does this compare to the things you might get in the mail about a claim to give you can sign up with this company, a third party energy supplier, and you get 100% renewable. That's completely different from community solar.
Right.
It's not related in any way. And what they're typically offering, I can't speak to every possibility, but I did look into those a lot. And I even did one for a year, Clearview Energy. And what they're typically doing is they're saying, well, we'll give you these credits that correspond to hydro generation from my thing was, I think, in Wyoming or something. And the main difference is that the electricity generated in Wyoming, it's not like it goes through some wires and gets into my house or is even connected to the same grid. But there's no connection whatsoever to the electricity that has to get produced anyway to make all my appliances work. While in contrast, community solar, they built an array in White Marsh that connects into the BTE grid that is connected through wires to my house. Now, you can't trace back each electron that comes into your house to see where it came from, but generally it's like it is directly contributing to my grid, so it does offset some other production. It decreases the need to cycle. If many people do it, in principle, it's decreasing the need to cycle on coal power plants sometimes. And that's how it's having the savings. So it's a very different thing. Though in principle, I mentioned you could do both, but in my opinion, the most high impact thing is community solar. But I'm happy if if anyone wants to talk about that stuff, any things about that, I'm happy to talk. And if you have any questions, sorry, Kimberly, if you have any questions, like, you want someone else to look at your contract, I've looked at these contracts and scrutinized them. And if you want someone to take a look, or, just email me any question. I would love it. I would actually I would feel great if you email me, or email Kimberly as well. She also is an expert. Yep. And Julian too. But I'm just putting myself out there. You can email me anytime about this. I would love to talk about it anytime.
Yeah, so I just want to say too, just with the third-party suppliers, just like you do any contract, be very, very careful, because sometimes they will give you a lower percentage to get you signed on. And then 6 months down the line, the rate will skyrocket, right? So you just want to be careful with third-party suppliers, just like you want to be careful with any of the subscriber organizations for community solar as well. So I also saw a couple of questions in the chat about what if the company goes out of business? Great question. So because it's monitored through the PSC, what they usually do, if they're going out of business, they would usually sell their development to another subscriber, or find someone else to take that development project on, or that subscription host. We have had that, similar things like that happen. Not so much that they went out of business, but maybe someone just wanted to develop the project, hold on to it until they got a certain number of subscribers, and they would sell it to someone else. So that has happened. So, but because I'm on the Public Service Commission, it's so regulated, and because our regulations are, I guess you could say, it's a living document. So we have like 3-hour calls. And sometimes we go through each line when we have an issue, because it's a pilot program, we are trying to get a lot of the niches out of it, so that because we want to make it a permanent program, not just a pilot program, but make it a permanent program. So we're kind of like going through a lot of the glitches and things now. And then I think someone also asked the question, where do they get the funding from? Michael talked about this a little bit. The Maryland Energy Administration. They give they have a fund where when developers, it's a whole RFP process that they have to go through to get the funding. You also have a lot of nonprofits that or foundations that want to see this thing happen, so they also contribute as well. So the funding and then you have developers have their own financing as well. So the funding comes from a lot of different places.
So one question here is around communication and transparency. So if I sign up for community solar, other than a regular invoice, how good are these companies at communicating to their customers around, the development of a particular array, the amount of CO2 reduced, things along those lines? Personally, from what I've seen, these companies take a lot of pride in, in those who do invest in them. And there's some really great marketing around, seeing again, exactly where that development's occurring. But I think on some of the granularity of the production and impact, I'm curious, if Kimberly or Michael, either of you have anything to say to that.
Well, I know that most of these organizations have, or companies already have been working in the solar industry for years. So most of them already have a website. And if they have a community solar subscription or platform, they usually have a website or blog or something that you can always connect with someone. They always come up with articles. And I'm not promoting Neighborhood Sun, but I'll just say we partner with Neighborhood Sun a lot on different things. And they actually have newsletters that come out. They have a website. They have things on the website like tips for the day. And it's always easy to get in contact with someone. So this is just my personal experience with working with neighborhood sons over the years, and Michael as well can attest to that, is that people will call you back or email you back. And I like to ask questions. Like if I'm a very inquisitive kind of person, right? And my brain is always thinking. So I like to ask questions. So I just encourage people, if you have a question or thought, either pick up the phone and call someone or email someone and ask them about the CO2. But most of them already have like a website that is that has a lot of information in it.
Yeah, they definitely send good communications about what they're doing, new projects that are coming online, and they're not too many. It's not like they're filling up your inbox, but they are definitely keeping you informed of what's happening, and what, you know, with your project. You even are invited if you want to. They couldn't do it during COVID time, but I think it'll start again in the future. If you want, you can go to the sort of the turning on ceremony of the solar array. So I think that the previous one before me, that there was a big kind of party where people, you know, went out and that you could see the solar array that got built on top of a landfill, that's connected to the grid, and you can all be there and you can meet the people who work in Neighborhood Sun, and so that seemed really nice. So yeah, they're super responsive. And if you even want to test Neighborhood Sun, you can go on their website. They have a little chat feature, and you can just chat with someone. I mean, there's almost always someone there who's like, we'll chat via, you know, computer chat. I mean, and they've been extremely responsive. I've asked them so many questions. Like they probably all know that this is like this troublemaker Rosenblum, like trying to ask everything.
Yeah, and someone asked a question. This is a great question too, about community solar for businesses and schools. Absolutely. So even though we talk a lot about residential because that's kind of like been our wheelhouse, but businesses can do it, schools can do it, municipalities can do it, churches can do it. Give you a perfect example. I'm gonna show you this real quick, and then see this array right here. This is me right here in the blue. That was a long time ago. I wanted to just show myself off, but also outside of that, this array right here is actually two arrays out of one. And this array is actually on a church, in a church yard in Annapolis. So churches, we work a lot with churches as well. So churches can participate, businesses, anyone who wants to sign up for community solar is welcome to. And those are some of the, because some maybe the contracts may be different for a business and, you know, in a church. So when, you know, if they want to sign up, you know, it's important to once again ask questions on how would that work, what they look like, or if you work with a church, maybe or school, maybe you could, because this is what I would love to see. I would love to see schools that offer community solar to the parents of the students. Like say, because you know, everyone doesn't have, you know, a single, or you have a home, or even in Baltimore City where I live at, where Johns Hopkins is, I'm not too far from Johns Hopkins. I live in Bel Air, Edison. You have a lot of homes that have small roofs. So they may not have the capacity to get a solar array, but however, they may still want to participate in community solar and reducing their energy bill. So I would like to see something like that happen.
So it looks like the last Q&A question was just answered. So someone touched on one thing that I would just want to bring back up again, since we have a couple more minutes here. And it was around, and I think maybe Michael, you were speaking to it. It was around the question of, you know, well, what happens on a cloudy day, or, you know, how is my home energy directly impacted by the solar array? And the answer is that the electrons from that array are not coming to your home. However, your investment in the community solar model goes to directly fund the construction of a plant, right? And so this is where this concept of additionality comes in that I just want to come back to one more time, which is different than, say, purchasing green power credits that come from a pre-existing solar facility, where you're buying the green attribution of that, and then that money is going to support the broader unspecified deployment of clean energy. And this is where things get really complicated for consumers. And so I'm just gonna like whet everyone's appetite for some future unplanned webinar, maybe that Michael or Kimberly will participate in another point. But I find that this is such, the issues around energy choices for consumers are very abstract. We see food when we eat it, we see waste when we dispose of it in a bin. We don't see the energy we buy. We flip the switch and we sort of don't always know what happens behind the scenes. And so the concept of legitimacy and additionality when the electrons still don't come back to my house, I think is confusing for some people. So I don't know if either of you just have anything you wanted to add to that. Or if I did a great job of encapsulating it, then that's good too.
I think it's well said. And I'd be happy to be on any future panel talking about those this is, just to be clear, not related to community solar, totally separate. These mail you might get from companies that claim right on the front 100% renewable energy by switching your electricity supplier, and they're gonna. Those ones are. I'll just say I'm not a big fan of those ones, having looked into what actually is happening. And some I have to give a caveat. They might be good. Some might be good. I don't want to say they're all not good, but I would, yeah. But community solar, it seems, I think it's just a much higher impact thing to do, and it's, it doesn't cost anything. Well, the other ones might cost some, and they also have the other ones are sometimes associated with scams. The other ones meaning the third party energy companies, not all, of course, but while community solar, there's not been any reports of scams on that, to my best of my knowledge. So, yeah.
So we probably have time to answer one more question here. Sorry, Michael, feel free to finish your thought.
Yeah, no, please.
I was just going to say, there's a lot of questions around the percentage differences, the savings to the consumer, and what the relationship is and how those prices are set. Why is there such variance, and what does that imply necessarily? Kimberly, is that something that you might speak to as we wrap up today?
Yeah, so the percentages varies for the developer. It also depends on the cost. So each array is a different size. Each array, so a bigger array will allow more subscribers, so therefore they may get a lower reduction of it, because developers are still looking for a return on their investment. Also, these percentages can change as well. So as we grow the program and more developers come online, so what we call, they may be in the queue. So they are like waiting to either what we call flip the switch or turn on the array. And because they also is competition as well. So some may say, we offer 5%, so we are competing against another, a host, and we want to offset 10%. So it's competition, it's development. So a lot of factors go into the percentages. Also, you have to be in compliance with whatever the PSC says for the size of that array as well.
Thank you. That's great. Well, I'd like to extend my deep thanks to Kimberly and Michael for joining today, and for all of you from the Johns Hopkins community who are out here today interested in purchasing clean energy for your homes. It's easy to overlook the decision and impact of one person. I think we have a huge community here, so I would encourage you to spread the word, use some of the links that were really thoughtfully incorporated into the chat today. And as I think our guest speakers have alluded to, you're welcome to reach out with additional follow-up questions from today. Michael has even offered to offer financial guidance for you if you need.
I wouldn't go that far as to say, because I have no qualifications for that whatsoever. So I do not offer that, but I do offer to, if you just want some informal, from just someone who's looked at these contracts before, to see, does this look reasonable, or at least similar to what I signed up for and I really like. And I'm happy to look at that if you have any questions. But I'll emphasize the key things that you want, and this is what's already typically in the contracts of Neighborhood Sun, which is the one I'm familiar with, the company I'm familiar with. So, and I've researched by far the most. The Neighborhood Sun contract, it's a no-cost termination clause, which says that no cost to terminate within, say, 60 days or something, or 90 days for any reason. You definitely want that. And yeah, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, I want to also let people know we do have a YouTube channel, and last year we did a 3-part series that talked nothing about. We just talked about community solar, and it's broken down into 3 components. So just go to YouTube and put in Solar United Neighbors and community solar, and a whole flood of things will come up.
Thank you, everyone.
It's great.
We're wrapping up today's webinar. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.